Good evening and welcome to Success in the City. My name's Helen Webster and I'm with the lovely
Sandra Scott, and our very interesting guest today is
Dale Roberts.
Welcome.
Amazing. Thank you, Dale, for giving your time tonight. We're dead excited to have you on, and loads of amazing things have happened to you recently.
Yeah.
But we will find out more about them as we go along. But the first thing that we do is we shout out to the kids, any little people who've done amazing things. Okay, so San, have you got any little people, young people you want to
shout out to Miley because she's fractured her leg.
Oh no!
There was no Russian, English, and Spanish tonight. We didn't have any of that. I taught someone else instead, but because Miley's fractured her leg, so Sue was running around like a mad thing after them all. So just shout out to my little angel, really. So I'm gutted for her over that. But there we go.
Yeah. Get well soon, Miley.
Yep.
Yeah. Dale, have you got any young people, little people you want to shout out to?
Of course. The only person I can give a shout out to is my little boy, Jude. So I'm obviously a huge Beatles fan anyway, but yeah, my he's 10, Jude. And you know what? Specifically this week, he makes me proud every single week. You know, he goes through a lot in general. I won't go into details, but he's a great little lad. He makes me proud every day.
Yeah. Lovely. Shout out to Jude.
Shout out to Jude. Yep. Shout out to Jude. So I am going to shout out to all of the LLS students, the Stephen Gerrard Academy students, and all of the schools who attended our International Women's event last week. So they were all young people who, for their age, are phenomenally mature and amazing, just unbelievable young people. Well, young girls, because it was all girls, who have got amazing futures ahead. And I was like, I felt in awe of them when I was in the room. I was just like, this is amazing, these young people so some of them are 17. And on Monday, they were flying out to go and coach in Tenerife for 2 weeks.
Oh, brilliant.
Wow.
I was a little bit jealous because I was like, yeah, nice little bit of sun would have been nice. But yeah, and they're going out. And we had young girls flying from Belfast. Some came up from Anglesey. Some came up from London. And I thought, what an amazing thing to get these young people in one room together. So big shout out to all of them. Yeah. Cool. So a success this week, personally for you, something that's happened that's cool.
My week.
A success one first, though, San.
All right, then. So my success is, so I did my little talk on International Women's Day. I gave a talk at Haven Hospice, and that was great. A gorgeous group of people they are over in Frodsham. I got there, only got lost twice, but I was on time. And it started snowing and I got home okay as well. That was fine as well. So that went really well. I've had a few really good things happen actually this week because on Friday, the University of Liverpool have been doing some work with us in the business, helping us about a digital office. So like when you use a QR code, we can make it go into different languages. And we talked to them about an app. And it was just dead exciting. So we're doing an exhibition on Thursday at FACT all day with the University of Liverpool. So I'm really chuffed about that. And my biggest success was on Thursday that I didn't die when I was hit by a car. But there we go. So thank you and immense gratitude for that. That was my successes last week. What about you?
That was a genius success that you're still alive. So that's cool. My successes were I spoke at International Women's Day with LLS invited me along and it was an amazing, really cool event. And Bianca Cook, our Taekwondo world champion was there and we did a little bit of, so we got to punch people and things like that. So that was like cool. And there was just amazing young people and people who've done dead cool things. And then yesterday we went to Liverpool John Moores University for Get That Job, it's called. So it's all of the young sports students when they finish, what are they going to do next? So there's about 30 different people in the room. So like the RAF, the police, lots of different sports things, Camp America and all places like that. Yeah. And we were able to take Lou with us. And we had some of the young lads playing on it, which was hilarious. They were like, "What's this?" And then next thing, they were like so competitive. It was unbelievable. And then I was like, "Right, do this as a sit-up," and they were like, "What?" You know. So yeah, but it was really cool.
Did you talk to them about the opportunities you've got going over in Saudi or not?
Yeah, so I spoke to a lovely, lovely young lad called Hayden, who was 22, and he's already taught in Sri Lanka,
Wow,
America, Ireland, and he's looking at possibly coming over to Saudi Arabia.
how good's that? It's such an opportunity, isn't it? These skills you have, you can take you anywhere now. It's amazing, isn't it?
But you look at these kids who are like 22, 23, and what they've done is just phenomenal. And I was just stood there, and he was like, I took a year out, and I went to Sri Lanka, and then I went to America, and then I went here, and he's just delivered sports coaches, and his girlfriend is a gymnast coach, so he was going home to speak to her, and hopefully both of them would come on.
That'd be fun.
A great little experience for them, yeah. So yeah. So what about you, Dale? What successes have you had this week?
I feel like there's been many like little successes, and I think it's important to always pick up on them. I think it's right to do that, even the little things every morning, every day. It's right to pick up on them, be optimistic about them, and take the little victories. But before I say it, you got hit by a car, Sandra. I feel you need to elaborate on that a little bit.
You can elaborate on that. That'll be my embarrassing moment later. Don't worry. My life, that's just my life. Don't worry. Yes, my successes are really, we're clutching at straws like I made an omelette. So don't worry. Sometimes they're very, very basic successes.
I mean, they are. I remember all those years ago in lockdown. Those were the little successes every day. I was like trying to learn how to cook something new. That was a big deal. And for me, that was a huge, huge thing. I was prouder than anything I was doing in my career. It was that I managed to perfect cooking a steak. But this week specifically, I going back to last week, I started feeling really rough. I started feeling really sick, run down. A lot's been going on recently anyway. But then I started feeling really sick, and my voice is my livelihood. If I lose my voice, I lose everything, And I lost my voice. I'll be honest with you. In the past 8 years of my life, I can't really remember losing my voice that often. And when you consider I speak a lot, all the time, it's rare that I lose my voice, but I've lost it this week. And on Friday, I was supposed to do 2 tours on the Magical Mystery Tour, and I had to call in sick, and I hated doing that. I hated it. But on Monday, I decided I'm going in. It's happening. I'm going in. So, on Monday, I went in. I've done 2 tours. And I know that sounds so simple. It's something I do every single week. But I did it with no power in my voice at all. So my instrument, it was like playing a guitar that was completely untuned, and it made it extremely difficult. But customers, guests, I hate calling them customers, truthfully. Guests were coming over to me and still saying, absolutely love this. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. I was like, it's a difficult one. My voice is going. And they're like, I can't tell, because they don't know what my normal voice sounds like. That was my little victory this week, that I managed to get out, go to work, and do a good job, even though I was feeling really rough and still am, truthfully.
I know. Well, and thank you for coming whilst you're feeling rough, because I know that man flu is much worse for everybody. It's actually scientifically proven. It is actually scientifically proven that men suffer more with flu than women do. But okay.
Yeah.
It is, honestly. So we're going to play this or that. So Dale, I'm going to ask you and Sandra, and then Sandra will ask me and you. Okay. So am I going to go first?
Yeah, go on. You go first.
Okay. So I did say that our sponsors are KCFM Kitchen Cleaners. So they do, and they're going to sponsor us for the month of March. So I did say that my first one was going to be relatable to what they do. Okay. So would you rather mop a big, massive gym hall or wipe the surfaces of a kitchen? Sandra?
Wipe the surfaces of a kitchen easily.
Would you? What about you, Dale?
Think how many mop bucket changes you'd have to do for a whole gym hall.
That's a fair point. It depends which one's dirty. Like, think about it. Like, if it was a proper dirty kitchen counter or dirty gym floor, it'd be like, it's almost like, I don't know, therapeutic, isn't it? Seeing the results afterwards, I think.
Okay. So you'd go for the dirtiest one?
Counter, though. Yeah.
Oh, I'd go 100%. I'd go mopping. I love mopping. Yeah, I love mopping. I'm quite happy getting a little flow. Yeah, I love mopping.
Your back would be done in by the end of it, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so I'd
Jim
go
Hall.
mop. Cool. Go on, Sam.
That just reminded me of someone when we were down in London in one of the pubs, and she had a book and a mop. My husband was a publican at the time, and he went, "Any chance you could use two hands, Julie?" I've never laughed like that with a book.
So Peter Lloyd's listening in.
Hiya,
Award-winning Peter Lloyd, and he says hire a cleaner.
I'm so excited because he's got the go-ahead for the garden, and we're doing it in the 37 languages of Eurovision. I'm so excited.
Brilliant.
That was another success.
Awesome.
That's good. Okay, so keeping in line with what we were saying, we'll just do one about KCFM as well, about what they do. Would you rather jet wash the outside walls of a building or clean the windows? Dale.
Jet wash. Easy. And like the jet wash, I mean, I don't know how often you've used the jet wash.
I've never used a jet wash, Dale.
You never go and see
things in the world. If you've got like a patio, dirty floor that's covered in mold, get the jet wash on it. Takes it all up. It's amazing. Like genuinely, it's a miracle worker. It's great.
Oh, I've seen the results of it, Dale. I've just never been allowed to use one. Okay. Go on, Hal.
You'll never be allowed to use one ever, Dale. As you will know by when you get to the red face moment. I would probably jet wash because I think it's like, it's quite satisfying. What about you, son?
It'd be brilliant. Well, I'd like to jet wash if I was allowed to. And I certainly wouldn't want to abseil down the side of a building to clean windows, which is, those people do. So
they do.
Here we go. All right, then.
Chocolate raisins.
One Dale.
One Dale.
I was about to say, my first car, it was like my pride and joy. I had a Ford Focus. It was beautiful. And I used to like to keep it clean. And one day, my mate was like, use my jet wash. And I used my jet wash and I blasted the back of it. And the nice little sign where it said Ford Focus just ripped straight off.
Oh, my goodness.
So that's me. I can't be trusted with the jet wash either.
Yeah. At least it was only the sign. It'd be Sandra's foot or something like that.
Get one.
Okay. Chocolate peanuts or chocolate raisins, Dale?
Yeah, peanuts. Chocolate peanuts.
Raisins, hands down.
Oh, chocolate peanuts for me.
Okay. Right. Then I'm going to go with food. Lasagna or moussaka? Dale.
Lasagna. Yeah, absolutely lasagna. Love it.
What was the one that we used to have in Carlisi, San?
You had the lasagna and I had the Parmigiana Melanzana.
The Parmigiana, that's just out.
Well, I'm going to Marie's with our own for dinner because her mother-in-law's over from Italy on Saturday. And she said she's going to do Parmigiana. And she goes, what is it you can't have again? And I went, gluten. So she goes, so you're vegetarian? I went, just do gluten-free. Don't worry about anything else. Just so we can eat that. And she said, she does the aubergines over in flour. Is that? And I went, no. But you see, the Italian way is the Italian way. They won't deviate from plan. So it's got to be a different dish. And I was thinking, I wanted the melanzana alla parmigiana, but never mind.
Yeah.
So
I'd probably go moussaka, but that Parmigiana is amazing.
It is lovely what they have in Carl. Have you been there, Dale? Carlisi on Dale Street. It's so nice. Little Italian place, really, really lovely. The food's gorgeous. Okay. Then. So
go on, Sam. What would you eat?
So I love lasagna. It's like one of my favourite foods, but it's very rare to get a nice gluten-free lasagna now. Mm-hmm. So moussaka, I suppose. But there we go. Go on, Hel.
Okay. Dale, would you rather take a group of tourists or a group of people from their city who are being tourists for the day? So
wow.
Like people like us.
People like us to go as a tourist, or like a tourist in your own city, or like a tourist from abroad.
Never mind the accident-prone thing. I'm so going on one of those bikes. He inspired me when he talked at the Ling meeting. I thought I'm going to do that, but with a helmet on.
Yeah, I might need to wrap you up in bubble wrap.
So hopeful.
You know what? I I'm really happy if I get a local person on a tour, truthfully. So someone from Liverpool. So if I have a tour and people get on board from Liverpool, I love that because you can see as you're guiding to them, they start taking a lot of pride in their own city and they learn things about their own city they didn't know. So, and I think that's incredibly important in general, that people take pride in where they live. And I think it instills a huge sense of community, a huge sense of pride in themselves and where they live. So on like a real principled basis, I love taking locals around, but I love tourists. Tourists are great as well. They're all on holiday. They're all happy, typically. Normally, they're in the best sort of mood. And I always say you see the best version of themselves, you know, because you see these people wanting to enjoy themselves, wanting to have fun, wanting to laugh. So I love that. So it's actually extremely difficult because the only thing that would probably sway me to say I'd rather a group of tourists is because if you get a group of 50 tourists and one Scouser on a bus, you actually have 2 tour guides and not one.
Yeah.
Because the Scouser will spend the entire time interrupting, saying, why aren't you pointing out this? You know, and they'll also, many of them go as far as saying, that's where my Auntie Lynn lives down there, and someone that I know owns a shop down the road. And they'll permanently interrupt with their own tour within itself, and then also question as to why you haven't said things yet. Like, most of the time, I'm about to say something, and they'll beat me to it. And it happens every time a Scouse is on board a tour bus or on a bike, you know. They always go, why are you talking this? So I'd probably say a group of tourists just for that reason alone. But deep down, what I love the most is getting local people to enjoy their own city. That's exactly what I live for. It's what I'm about.
Yeah.
If I had to pick between the two, it's probably tourists.
Yeah. What about you, San?
People from elsewhere, because I'm a bit like you, Dale, and I've always been like that, very passionate about Liverpool and come from an age where we used to have to fight its case, you know, everywhere. But because I'm into the languages as well, I love telling foreigners about it. And I remember having an exchange student when I was 14 and taking her around and showing her everywhere. And my mum used to have like people pay to come and stay from abroad, like students, and we'd take them around and show them everywhere in the city and that. So I'm really, really passionate about that. So I love taking foreign visitors around, not even visitors from elsewhere, but specifically foreign visitors if I can, international tourists. Do you remember that time we saw that guy, Hal, on the motorbike? And you went, help him. I was like, what? And he was French, wasn't he? And you were made up. You were going, you should have videoed that. And I was going, shut up. If I see anyone in town looking at the phone, looking at a map, I'm over there straight away. I walk people to restaurants, everything. Yeah. I'm really, like yourself, I'm really passionate about promoting the city, you know.
Yeah. You know what? When I first became a tour guide, I was like that. I'd see someone looking at the phone trying to find somewhere, and I'd stop them and go, "You okay? Do you need a hand?" And quite often they'd look at me like I was dead weird. They weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
But now I don't know what it is, and it's not like I walk around with a uniform saying tour guide. But I'll be on my day off in normal clothes, and people will just come over to me and go, "Do you know where such and such a place is? Can you recommend such?" And I'll be like, "How did he know? How did he know to come to me and ask this stuff?" You know.
The order that you give off.
Just look helpful.
Yeah. So I always say be a tourist in your own city. So wherever you are, everybody I think should experience the tourism in their own city. So to do all of the tours, because you think you know stuff and you know absolutely nothing until you've been on the tours and things like that.
But hell, I've been doing that, haven't I, with him? So I have some foreign people come over. I teach English to different types of the year. Usually individual clients one-to-one, and we take them out and stuff. So I've been doing a bit of things that I wouldn't normally do, because one of the ladies has moved here. She's German and I teach her English. So I took her like to the Victoria gallery, you know, at the university, and doing a few different things that you wouldn't know. They're not the main top 10, if you like. And they've been really interested. Like we took her around the Athenaeum and she loves it. She just loves seeing all these buildings and things. And it's an opportunity to teach as well, you know, like new vocabulary and things. So it's been really good doing stuff like that for me as well as a tourist.
It's a cool thing, isn't it? It's a cool thing to do. So yeah, I think I would rather have a big gang of foreigners to take around and show them.
Yeah.
show them the city. Yeah. Go on, Sam. Last one.
Okay. Electric bike, Dale, or what would we call a normal bike? A
Push
normal bike. A push bike.
Normal bike. This is such a dangerous question.
Well,
I
I've
need to
asked
make
it deliberately.
myself- Oh, you have. I need to make myself look like I'm a keen cyclist who absolutely loves cycling. And I do. I like a cycle. But can you imagine, right? We start down by the docks on our bike tour, and we go from the docks immediately to the Liverpool Cathedral, which, as we know in the city, is uphill.
Barley.
Yeah. If you do that on a standard bike, you can guarantee for a good 30 to 40 seconds, I'm trying to catch my breath, you know?
Yeah.
I get to the top and I'm puffing and panting, you know? If I'm on an electric bike, different story. You get to the top, you get off your bike, you can talk. So as a tour guide, absolutely electric bike, because it does take a lot of the effort and energy out on the uphill bits.
Don't realise how steep that is until I did the Liverpool half marathon and didn't realise how steep Upper Parliament Street was. Because that's the first bit that you run and you just like you get to the top and you think, God, it doesn't look that steep. But I think I'd go electric bike because I hate cycling. What about you, Sam?
Well, I didn't know that they were all electric bikes, Dale, so that's inspired me even more. I'm definitely going on this tour. When I used to live with John and Sean in the cathedral, and I'd walk up from work from the Cotton Exchange, just up Duke Street, and then up into the cathedral, and that was a steady walk. You know, you don't realise, as you say. But well, I've never been on an electric bike, so I don't know. But I'm going to try one definitely. Now you've told me about that steep hill. I don't know. Coughing up a lung on arrival at the cathedral.
Cool. Okay, so we've done this or that. Sandra, I'm going to hand it over to you because you're going to introduce Dale to us. And then Dale, we're going to hand it over to you. So go on, Sam.
I'm really, really delighted to have Dale on today because Dale is a very experienced tour guide in the city and has worked in different capacities from management level to tour guide, etc., on lots of different famous things in the city, which he's going to talk about. But more recently has acquired the Liverpool cycle tours. And I heard him talk about this at a link meeting we went for people working with the hospitality sector and in the hospitality sector. And I thought, that's brilliant. He needs to get on our show. So take it away, Dale. We'd love you to talk about how you've come to do what you do, why you do it, and all about it, really, because people will be listening who are interested and maybe want to come on one of the tours or recommend it to people.
Well, I should say, I love the fact that you said experienced tour guide. I fell into it by accident. You know, I never intended in a million years to be a tour guide. And I think that over the years since I've told people that, you know, I didn't intend to be a tour guide, I've discovered a lot of people have found their careers and professions in a similar way. It just kind of happens, doesn't it? You just find out what you're good at and you go with it. But it was many years ago. I worked in the Beatles story, and at the time I was also a editor and writer at the Guide Liverpool, which is Jay Hines. And it was when the Guide had just started out, and I was extremely passionate about writing articles about the city, about, you know, being a tourist in your own city and things like that. And simultaneously, I was working in the Beatles story, but I was working in effect as like a glorified security guard, truthfully. So I was walking around and my job was making sure everything was okay, everything was turned on, you know. But I found myself just going around talking to tourists, and I'd chat away to them. They'd have the headsets on and they'd ask me a question. And I love the Beatles, so I was very happy to answer the questions. And that's not how I became a tour guide. I just discovered I enjoyed chatting to people, you know. But it was after I left the Beatles story, I got a job as head of marketing for the open top tour buses. And one day the owner, who is Philip Olivier, who we all know as Tin Head from Brookside, of course, he said to me one day, Dale, listen, the cruise ships are about to start coming in. It's about to be cruise ship season. And the American tourists love the Beatles. And you love the Beatles. Can you design me a Beatles tour? And I was like, I'll give it a go, you know. So we sat down, designed a Beatles tour. And one of the lads came in, a lad called Lee. And we both designed, alongside Phil, this new Beatles tour. And it turned out it was quite a good idea. So we ran it as a scheduled tour and we set it up, threw it out there, and it became extremely successful. But one day we couldn't get enough tour guides, and we were trying to get good qualified guides and things like that, and we just simply couldn't get them. And the lad sat down with me one day and said, Dale, you can publicly speak. You know a lot about the Beatles, and you're also involved in designing the tour. So you're on the tour bus on Saturday. You know, I was like, come on. I said, I'm not a tour guide. I never intended to be one, you know. And they said, doesn't matter, you can do it. And that's not how people should get into tour guiding, by the way. You should never be thrown in the deep end. And on those buses, it was 70 people, you know. So the first time I got up and tour guided, I was speaking for 1.5 hours in front of about 60 people on a bus. And at the end, it was a stand ovation. It sounds dramatic. It wasn't. He stood up because they had to get off the bus. They all gave me a clap, and everyone was delighted with it. I was sweating. I was petrified. One of the good things with tour guide, and you get tips as well, cash tips.
Well, I was going to say, Dale, are they generous tips? Well, the Americans might be generous. Are they generous tips?
This is an interesting one. Like, we found that the Americans used to be great tippers, and typically they are good.
Yeah.
But it's kind of dried up over the years. I don't know why. Yeah, I know. So the Americans tip less. We find that British people are great tippers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, people from the
You need
UK,
to tell them it's
tippers.
the purple ones that are the best. The purple notes are the best ones.
What I'd like to do when I retire. I've always wanted to be a tour guide, but as my retirement profession.
Yeah.
I
find my assessment over the years, the Scottish, the Irish, incredible tippers, quite a lot of British people. Scousers on tour buses, always generous. We're a generous bunch, aren't we? So yeah, that's my assessment on tour guide tipping. Yeah, interesting. At the end of my first tour, I got loads of tips. And as one of the guys was getting off the bus, one of the guests, he was chatting away to me to side the bus, and the driver came off alongside him, and the driver said, "Well done, mate, you've done a great job there." And the fellow looked at me, and then the driver said, "It was his first tour." And the guy was like, "No, it wasn't," whatever, and laughed it off and walked away. He didn't believe it was my first tour. And I remember thinking after that, that's really good. But you remember, I was marketing manager. So for me, feedback is key on everything, you know. And I was permanently monitoring the likes of TripAdvisor and Google and Facebook for reviews and feedback. And after my first tour, I think I got 3 or 4 5-star reviews off one tour. And I was absolutely like, this is incredible. But I'm actually not too bad at this, and I didn't expect it to be. So I found my job after that split. I was doing 3 days management and 2 days tour guiding. And over time, I found myself just enjoying the tour guiding a lot more.
Yeah.
And cut a very long story short. I won't give you my life story, but I ended up about a year and a half into tour guiding. The Cavern heard about me, and Bill Heckler owns the Cavern called me up and said, "We want you working for us." So I joined the Cavern as a tour guide, working for the Magical Mystery Tour, which they own. I then joined the Cavern's head office, which I worked in for about 4 years as the digital marketing guy. So I looked after all the social media and everything online, while simultaneously guiding on the Magical Mystery Tour, and also becoming the only tour guide of the Cavern Club itself. So I used to be the guy who took people around the Cavern, explaining the long, complex history of the Cavern Club. And then it was November 2021. I became manager of the Magical Mystery Tour. So things move quite quick. But managing the Magical Mystery Tour, the Magical Mystery Tour has been operating for 40 years. It's an institution in this city, you know. It's really, that was a really cool thing. But, you know, I was tour guiding a lot. I was managing. And I got the opportunity in the end. The guy who owns Liverpool Cycle Tours, or owned it, Phil Ware, he's ran it for 13 years. It's a fantastic tour. And he was asking me quite often, you know, Dale, you know, he wasn't wanting out. It wasn't a case of like, I want to be on. But he said, I feel the need to hand this over. You know, this needs sort of someone young who can be on the bikes. You know, he said, you'd be the perfect guy for this. And I thought about it, and it was a long process. But yeah, come February this year, I become the new owner of Liverpool Cycle Tour as well. Still working. Thank you. I'm still working for Cavern. I still work on Magical Mystery Tour, but I now ride bikes as well. So,
which is quite nice, isn't it? If you've got, I think what you were saying before, you've got like, your management job, and then you can go in and do like the real hands-on, meeting the public, having a great time. So your role now with having 3 different things, it's nice and varied. So therefore, you sort of go excited every time you go, rather than like, oh, I'm going to that job, isn't it? So what's your favourite part of it?
Well, there's multiple parts, which is great, because you've got to consider, if you tour guide on a bus, it's 53 people on a Magical Mystery Tour. And I'll be honest, as many of us probably know, every tour on a Magical Mystery Tour is full. It's very rare that the Magical Mystery Tour goes off half full. It's a very busy, popular tour, and it's arguably one of the most popular tours in the world. Certainly one of the most successful. So that's a show. I'll be honest, you get up, you're holding a microphone in your hand, and it's a 2-hour monologue, in effect, with music as well.
Do you sing?
So I don't know. No, I don't. On karaoke, badly. Not on a tour bus. No, these people are paid good money. I wouldn't subject them to my singing. But yeah, it's a show. It's entertainment. It's stand-up comedy. It's public speaking, and you try. For me, I try and create the highs and the lows. You're talking about the Beatles, and in their origins, there's lots of funny things. There's inevitably things that are quite funny about the story. But then there's also things that are quite sad about the story. So you've got to have those peaks and then the low points as well, and curate a tour which seamlessly brings them together and tells that story. On a bike, it's different. On a bike, you're in effect taking people from point to point to point, getting off the bikes, telling them about it. You're able to get closer to the places. So we spend like 45 minutes in Strawberry Field walking around the grounds, So it's a lot more personal. You're getting asked questions. Mm-hmm. So you have one which is a performance-based tour, and another one which is more information and experience-based, And I like that. The variety is so important.
You've got to know your stuff, haven't you? Definitely, to be of a high caliber. If people are asking you questions and everything, and it's having interesting facts. We had Steve Horton on here the other week, who does the walk-in tours, and he does some quite different types of things, historical areas. But there's the stuff, the knowledge you guys have got to have to be professional and get your 5-star review, as you say, on TripAdvisor. You've got to know your stuff and have interesting, quirky facts as well, I imagine. What's the have you ever been asked anything really strange?
Yeah. I mean, I had an old lady. She sat right at the front. And as we were driving through Sefton Park, she asked me, how many square feet is Sefton Park? I was like, I'm sorry, love, I don't know that. I've not went around with my measuring stick. I'm sorry, love. So that was like one example. But I had a guy the other day, and this is like, he was a lovely guy. So it's no criticism of him. Yeah. But he took his entire family. He traveled from the United States, and he brought his entire family. I'm talking 3 generations of family. There was about 14 of them on the bus.
Oh, wow.
So he paid a lot of money for them to get on. And, I've got to respect that. He's paid a lot of money. He wants information. He wants it to be the way he wants it to be.
Yeah.
I also understand that I provide a good tour. I'm not being arrogant or cocky with it. Yeah. I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional. But he kept on interrupting me, and he would interrupt me with specific dates. Do you know what date this person done this on?
Oh, no.
Look at me, you Beatles fan.
Yeah.
You get that quite often. And I'll be honest, there's a reason why you get it with Beatles fans more than any other fans, because you get a lot of fellas who've spent a long time studying the Beatles, and they don't live in Liverpool, so they've got no way of making a profession out of it. They go to pub quizzes and they tell their mates all these random facts about the Beatles. And they see me as a 32-year-old man. And when I started out, I was 26. They saw a 26-year-old lad making a living talking about the Beatles. And I'm not going to lie, it's a good job. It's a good job for men who love a band called the Beatles, which there's millions of those guys around, So quite often they try and trip you up just to make themselves feel like I could do that job. The proudest thing is when they ask me something so specific, a date, and I know it, and I get them on it.
Yeah.
And I actually quite often say to them, even though I know the answer, I go, you tell me, mate. You give me a... And they'll say it. And then like quite often they'll get it wrong, and I won't even correct them. I'll just put my hand around them and go, listen, I think it might be actually this, but you might be right on that. And then you can see them going away Googling it, and they come over to me at the next stop and go, you were right actually on that. And that's great.
Yeah.
I'm never there to take the mick out of people, though. People, they love it. They live and breathe it. It means the world to them, But the best one, the Beatles statues on the pier head. Okay, the amount of people over the years who, when you do a tour of the pier head, it's not a question they'd ask, but they'd look at those statues and they'd say, "I didn't realize they were that tall." We all have seen the Beatles statues in the city. They're like 8 foot tall, gigantic statues. And that's like genuinely the amount of people. I didn't know they were that big. Didn't know they were that tall.
You played for the Lakers.
That is immense. I was in a Hollywood house in Edinburgh years ago on a tour, and an American guy goes, "Where did they get all the wood? Like for the floor and everything?" And the Scottish guy, he was dead good. He said, "Oh, we have trees in Scotland like that." I was just like, the things people ask are just crazy, aren't they?
So Dale, how did you get into the Beatles? Well,
oh wow, I've got an interesting story with it, in as much as my parents were not Beatle fans. My dad, he was a bit into the Beatles, but my dad was born 1966, so it was just before him, And so my dad was more like Sex Pistols and punk, he was never a big Beatle fan. And my mum wasn't either. My mum was actually more Motown. My mum loves Motown music, soul music, and a big fan of pop. So if you go back to my childhood, I was listening to Robbie Williams and Take That and Lionel Richie, and Stevie Wonder. That was like, I loved that type of music. But when I was about 19 or 20, I remember being in my car one day, and I had some rubbish rock and roll compilation album, and I for the life of me don't know what the album was, but it had an obscure John Lennon song called Dear Yoko in it. And to be honest with you, not many people have heard the song, but it's a beautiful song, dead upbeat, nice melody. And I listened to it. I was like, that's John Lennon. And then I remember thinking, I've never actually listened to John Lennon. I don't know much of his solo stuff, because I just assumed Beatles, She Loves You, Want to Hold Your Hand, and all the rest of it, Imagine. I was like, I've never listened to John Lennon's solo stuff. So I went away and I downloaded, legally, downloaded every John Lennon album, downloaded every album I could find, and I listened to it religiously, like systematically just went through every song, and I was like, wow, he was good. As if it was news, as if it was like, wow, I didn't know that. And so I then downloaded every Paul McCartney album and every George Harrison album, and I didn't download every Ringo album, I'm not gonna lie. I downloaded every Beatles album, and I started just becoming obsessive about the Beatles. And I have a weird mind. I can have the ability to hyper focus quite well. So I learned everything there was to know about the Beatles within the years that would come. And then you've got to factor in, I then started working in the Beatles Museum. And then I started meeting Beatles people, people who had met the Beatles, and John Lennon's sister and the original Quarrymen. I was meeting these guys, and all of a sudden I was absorbed in that world. So I had to be knowledgeable about the Beatles. And then when you become a tour guide, it's like you've got to be above reproach. People are going to try and trip you up and ask you those questions, and people have done over the years. I've been tripped up on so many questions, and I'm fine with that. But I became obsessive about the Beatles in my early 20s, and it's not gone away.
That's amazing, isn't it? From your early 20s to start being a tour guide when you're 26, it's not a long time to be that knowledgeable. But you were talking about the Quarrymen. I used to teach in, so at the back of Broadway was the old Conservative Club, and the Quarrymen used to play there.
Yeah.
And I remember coming out and locking up after a fitness class, and as I was about to lock up, all these Americans appeared. And I was like, hiya. And they were like, oh, they said the Quarrymen used to play here. And I was like, oh yeah, because it said on the stage. And they were like, we just wanted to see where it was. And I said, well, I'll open up again if you want to come in. And they were like, what? So I opened up, so it's this old like club. Anyway, they all come on. They were all standing on the stage having their photograph taken, and then they were like going in the toilet, and they were like going, "Oh my days!" Like John Lennon and like Paul might have gone to the toilet, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing." It was just, but they just wanted to be where, like the Beatles had been and stuff like that. But it was just absolutely fascinating.
It really is. It means the world to these guys. Like genuinely. I've seen proposals in front of the gate to Strawberry Field. I had a girl on the tour about 5 or 6 months ago. Her name was Penny Lane. And she was in her 40s, this lady. She'd spent her entire life named Penny Lane after the song. So you could imagine she spent her entire life having that song sang to her. And the first time she arrived to Penny Lane was with me on the tour bus, poor thing.
Wow.
And she got to Penny Lane. She was crying her eyes out. It was so emotional. And I was so happy for her. She was crying.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, free reign. You can spend as much time here as you like. And she wandered into the middle of Penny Lane, right into the centre, was taking a picture in the middle of the lane. A car flew around the bend, beat the horn at it and said, "Get off the road." Hilarious, poor
it's
thing.
Like I'm Penny Lane. Stop.
Yeah. She waited her entire life to come to Penny Lane, and they got ran over on the corner of it. I thought, brilliant.
So Dale,
it means so much to them.
In terms of your new venture, your cycle tours and that you're doing now, so you have a set tour for that at the moment, or do you have different ones, or will you be doing a Beatles cycle tour, or what are the tours people can go on?
Well, the company's been going 13 years, and it's already got established tours.
Right.
So it has 4 tours predominantly. The 2 tours which I was about to say aren't the most popular, but it's the reason why is because they're not scheduled tours. Is we do have a South Coast cycle tour, which we do the whole riverfront of Liverpool, and we also have a walking Beatles pub crawl, which isn't on the bikes.
Oh yeah, you were speaking about that. We're interested in that, Helen, aren't we?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Tell us about that one as well.
You couldn't cycle on those ones; you'd fall off the bike. Yeah,
exactly.
But the 2 scheduled tours that we run, which are by far the most popular, is we have a City Centre Highlights tour, which is, of course, the Cathedral, St George's Hall, the Docks, the Cavern, Castle Street, and the likes. It's a 1.5 hour tour on standard bikes. Okay, but we also have a 3.5 hour Beatles tour. So it's like a 3 hour tour, which is 16.5 miles on electric bikes. But that's a Beatles tour. So you're going through the likes of Prince's Park, Sefton Park, Calderstones Park. Yeah. You're going to Strawberry Field, you're going to Penny Lane, you're going to the place where the Beatles first met, St. Peter's Church Hall, Eleanor Rigby's grave. You're going to all these places, and you're getting right into them. And then you're having the Riverside Drive all the way back to the city centre. So it's really, for me, that was what sold the tour company to me, that the Beatles tour is such high quality in terms of its visibility. But its city centre tour is brilliant as well. But they're the 2 tours. And I alluded to it at the Link meeting, which I met you at, Sandra.
Yeah.
There is developments in place for multiple other tours. So today I've had a directors meeting with Phil, who's the original owner, who's still involved in the company as a director. And we're currently in the process of designing a specific Eurovision tour, which that's going to be exciting. And I'm
Can
also
you do it on electric bikes and we'll go, Sam?
Absolutely.
I'm still upset. I can't talk about it. I'm so upset. I've got it to get absolutely brokenhearted. So carry on. Eurovision tour. Go on.
Well, it will be the next best thing to Eurovision. But the other thing is we're going to branch out into sport as well. So I'm not going to give too much away on that one. But that, for me, has got the potential to be a ridiculously incredible tour. It'll be sport, it'll be politics, it'll be the culture of Liverpool all in one tour, which is incredibly powerful. So yeah, we've got 4 tours at the moment, and there's a good chance that within the year we're going to go up to maybe 5 or 6.
I mean, there's
so where do the tours go from? Sorry, Sam.
It's all right. We do this all the time, Dale. We ask the same question. We talk all over each other. Everyone's used to it. I was going to say there's so much scope, though, isn't there? Because you've got like authors, politics, you've got all different things you can do, but sort of on a bike, as it were. And in London, there's loads of stuff like that. If you want a cycle tour in London, there's loads of them.
Yeah. you go all around Europe, and Europe has so many cycle tours because they're incredibly more cycle friendly in Europe. So you go to the likes of Germany, you say
Holland's unbelievable.
You know, Holland, everyone's on a bike.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that convinced me as well, is I've been a tour guide and a tour manager on buses for years, and one of the big talking points that there is with the bus industry is the diesel buses. You know, there's not space for more diesel buses in the city anymore. There's just simply not. But the other element is that our council are pedestrianising most of the city, which, you know, it has to. If we're going to reach net zero by 2030, we've got to do that. It's as simple as that. But Lime Street's no longer accessible by bus. Yeah. You know, you can get a bus onto it, but it's not the most accessible on the tour. And the Strand as well. The Strand's gone down to 2 lanes, and the pier head has been blocked off, has been pedestrianised. Yeah. So you factor in all these things, and I think the only effective way to do a really high quality tour and see the most amount of things is via bike or via some sort of electric vehicle. Okay, be that bike, be that scooter, or whatever it might be. I think that is the future of tours moving forward in the city. I'm quite convinced of it, and you know, I've worked in tours now for quite some time in different capacities, and I think it's the best way of seeing things. And don't get me wrong, I done a tour last week, and it started snowing while I was on a bike, and I started questioning if it was the best way of seeing things. Certainly not in the snow. Okay, so don't book a tour in the snow, but you can book it in any other weather.
So where do the tours go from? Where are you based?
It starts on the dock, so opposite the Albert Dock, in effect, King's Dock. So it's where the McDonald's and KFC is on the Strand, and that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Is it right by you guys? Well, okay.
Yeah, we're in the Baltic.
So we're based in the self-store, you know, the big self-store building.
Yeah.
That's where our office is.
Big stock, yeah.
I was in there about 2 weeks ago on the Leggett podcast, and they operate from self-store as well.
They're our neighbours.
Oh, yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
But so we used to actually cycle tours. If you go back 3 years ago, they were based in the exact same place where you are now.
Yeah,
yeah. So we've moved now to where there's Black Lodge Brewery. So we're right next to a brewery, which is really cool. So the bikes start from there, and then straight out of the dock, straight up to the cathedrals, and both our city centre tour and our Beatles tour, it's straight to the cathedrals straight away. For me, I love the cathedrals. I think they're absolutely beautiful. The 2 finest buildings in the city, in my opinion. And I think the Liverpool Cathedral's up there is one of the best buildings in the world. And I'm not being biased in saying that. I think it's absolutely beautiful as a cathedral. So we're straight up there, straight from the docks, you know.
Amazing. So how do people get in touch with you? So if people want to go on the tour, how do they get in touch? And we can share everything on our socials.
We'll share the links to book it and that. Yeah.
But how do people access it?
It's liverpoolcycletours.com. You go on there, the booking system's incredibly simple. You just go on it, you select the date that you want to do a tour, and you book on the times that are available. Dead simple. It's like any tour company should be, a really simple booking process. You know, just go on there, select your time, pay your money, and then turn up on the day. And on the day, we provide the bikes, we provide the safety equipment in terms of helmets and high-vis jackets. We even provide waterproofs as well. So if there is rain on the day, we've got heavy-duty waterproofs for everyone who gets on board the bikes. So it's extremely simple. All you have to do is be able to pedal, realistically. And even then, when you've got an electric bike, you know, the effort's taken out of it, truthfully. So it's really simple, really user-friendly, liverpoolcycletours.com. If people want to contact me directly to ask things, my own Instagram is Dale Liverpool. So people can find out anything they wish from me directly on there, you know.
I'm just typing these as you talk, and Dale Liverpool is
fantastic.
So, what's the future? So you've told us the future is you're going to do some more tours and hopefully and things like that. Have you got anything else that you want to share with us before we carry on?
No, in terms of the future, like I as I say, became the new owner 5 weeks ago of the company. It's been an incredibly busy 5 weeks, as you can tell with my voice, you know. So it's been non-stop. It's been hectic. But of course, I'm going to be crawling and then walking and then eventually sprinting. And I can imagine after your division is when the sprint begins for everyone within the tourism industry. I think things are going to be crazy. But yeah, that's the main thing. It's about focusing on the tours that we can do, putting them out on the road. And then within a year or two, that there's a huge amount of scope for progression, for change. I think change within the entire tourism industry as well. I think Liverpool's going to be rammed. It's going to be so busy. But yeah, it's extremely exciting days ahead, really is.
It is. It's amazing. Well, massive thank you for sharing your story. I think Sandra and I will come on a tour, and that will be hilarious then.
Not one tour, two. Oh, I did fall off a Segway in the Villa Borghese in Rome. Segways are quite dangerous, and we had to sign a waiver when I should have been suspicious. And I went straight over. It was terrible. I just jumped back on it. No, I was in agony.
Okay, so talking about your Segway incident. Sorry, Dale, go on.
I was about to say, she's not filling me with hope with vehicles.
I'm not going.
She falls off Segways, she gets hit by cars. I mean, this isn't looking good,
I was stationary at a roundabout.
I was going to say, talking about, my Uncle Ron says we could go on a tandem.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, because I'd end up pedaling. So, moving forward then, red face moment this week. Is anything slightly embarrassing happened? People can laugh along with?
Yeah, obviously. There's something happened when I was giving a talk on the Women's Day, which I'm not going to go into. But so last week I had a black eye, didn't I, on this side from when I fell over taking my mate's little boy to school. This isn't a regular thing. It's just sort of every quarter, but it all happens at once. And then on Thursday, we were going to the Reece Jones Centre for a meeting, and you were not far behind me, thank God. So I was in the car. So I'm at the roundabout thinking, yes, I go straight on. I've got a little, what's it called? I've got on the car hell that tells me I'm a good driver now.
A black box, a little.
So I've had a black box put in on the car, right? Because it used to be quite speedy, shall we say. So now I'm like, do. Anyway, so I'm there very careful. I have an app that tells me how ace I am. And I'm there at the roundabout. Next minute, whack. The car shot forward, everything. The best thing was, when I was telling the guy on the phone, he goes, did you have your seatbelt on? I went, I'd be dead. I would be absolutely dead if I hadn't had my seatbelt on. But my face hit the steering wheel. So I've got all makeup on, but my face is yellow. So I went in the hairdressers last week with a black eye and a cut, and she said, "Oh, there's cuts in your head as well." And then today I've gone in with me cheek black, but at least this side's better. So Dale, this is your true mate who just howls laughing every time you fall over or anything. I sent her the photo and she said she was crying laughing. But the most embarrassing thing was the poor woman was really distressed. She was in her late 30s. She'd never had a prank, unlike myself. So I was like, so Helen comes, she goes, Helen saw me and she pulls over and she goes, are you okay? I went, yeah, fine. I'm just reporting to the police. You need to see her. She's not in a good way. So Helen goes to look after the lady. And the lady goes, I wouldn't mind. Well, look at the state of what I've bumped into. Pointing to my car because there was gaffer tape on the bumper.
So I don't think the girl realised that I knew Sandra. I think she just thought I'd stopped out of kindness, which I would have done anyway. I said to the girl, I said, look, and she went, never been in a bump. I've never been in an accident. And I said, well, thank you, lucky stars. I said, you're both alive. You're both safe.
Yeah, exactly.
I said, it's just a piece of metal. It can be replaced, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I know. She goes, I've never, ever been in a bump. She goes, and look what I've bumped into. Well, I had to bite me lip because I was in. And then I said, it's all right. I said, you've really got a bit of damage. So the VW would come off, the front of the thing. So I picked it up and I said, only that. I said, that's all right. You can put it around your neck. Like the Beastie Boys. And she just looked at me and I thought, oh, you're too young for that joke.
Never mind. Yeah, Dale's probably when Dale said how old his dad was, I thought, oh yes. Yeah. It was so funny. And so that was that, but we're all alive, thank God. So that's amazing.
Have you got any red faces, Dale, to share with us? There must be something on the tour.
No, nothing, truthfully, but I've had a red face all week because I sound like Kermit the Frog, truthfully. So it's been in terms of this week for me, when you normally get up on a tour or you're out on the bike, I've typically got quite a powerful voice and I've just lost all power out of it. I felt like Kermit for the entire week. My son's laughing at me. It's awful, you know.
Cool. Okay. Shout out to the grown-ups. Any grown-ups?
Helen, haven't you got a red face?
No, I've been dead good this week.
Oh, it'll come back twofold next week. Okay, go on.
Grown-ups who've been amazing. I'm going to go first.
Go on.
I want to give a shout out to Heather and the team at Treaty Pie. So Treaty Pie, they do beautiful desserts, and Heather is actually going to come on the show and share her story and stuff like that.
Brilliant.
But our gorgeous friend Jo Swinney, so Zoe, who sadly had passed away, had seen this particular cheesecake like 3 years ago, and she'd put a post out, and Jo shared the post as a memory. Yeah. And Jo had rang Treaty Pie, and they said, "Oh, you know, we don't do that cake anymore." So I know Heather, so I messaged Heather and said, "Is there any way you can recreate this cake for me because of the importance of it?"
Yeah,
and she went, "Yeah." So they recreated it, and then they delivered 4 pieces on Sunday. So I want to give them a massive, massive shout out to him. So a massive thanks to Treaty Pie for going back and creating something, because it was magical. It just made a big difference, yeah.
Aww.
And then I want to give a shout out to Natasha Jonas, who's our very own boxer, who has, so she's won the British Boxing Board of Control Boxer of the Year, and she's the first female in history to receive it. And she's from our city. And she's an incredibly beautiful person. I have met her before, and she's dead down to earth. She's just lovely. So massive shout out to Natasha.
Fantastic. So I know you shared that the other day, and I thought it was brilliant. I'm going to give a shout out to Tina and to Elle, who work for Haven Hospice in Runcorn. And they're just so many of the fundraisers and the different charities are just the most gorgeous, gorgeous people, aren't they? Like our Fran from Big Help as well, and the ones from from Susie as well from an Alpha. So just gorgeous. So Helen and Elle from Haven Hospice, who were very kind and reassured me that my little talk was okay and wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And they were so kind. And Elle's fella bought 20 quid's worth of raffle tickets because I donated a language course. And she said he wanted to do French. And then so they've given, and I won a little prize because I bought some raffle tickets. And I said, "Oh, do you want the prize for your husband or partner for his?" And she said, "No, I didn't hear, but she'd won the second lot." So she was ecstatic that he'd won the language course. So I was made up. So, but they're just gorgeous people, and all the people at that hospice were lovely.
Brilliant.
Shout out to them.
Who do you want to shout out to, Dale?
Before the show, I was thinking I should really give a shout out to my partner, Romina, because she has to put up with me every day. And, I work a ridiculous amount, especially over the past 5 weeks. And she has to put up with me, and she's had to look after me while I'm sick. So it would be Romina. But before coming on, I was chatting to my dad. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I've got to give a shout out to a young person." And I was like, and as I was about to say, "I'm going to give it to my son," he went, "Well, I'm a young person." I said, "Dad, you're not a young person." I said, "But don't worry.
No,
there is a shout out. There's a shout. I said, "There's a shout out for adults later on, so I'll make sure I give it to you, Dad." So there you go.
Oh, big shout out.
And shout out to our sponsor, Mike Broom, who's our very first sponsor as well. So we made with that.
Massive shout out to Mr. Broom and KCFM. So what podcast book are you reading? Are you listening to? I've actually just downloaded, because somebody told me about it, The Subtle Art of Not Giving.
We've got that book in ours.
Have you? So I'm listening to it on Audible at the moment.
Well, they're all how.
I know. Well, I was listening to it. I thought, I think I already do that. I don't take things personally, but it's quite it's quite funny when I was thinking, I'm already like that. What about you, San?
I'm on the last part of the manifestation one that you told me about, but I've decided you need like a book. I thought, because I've got it on Audible, I thought I need the book of that, because she gives you tasks to do as well. So I'm going to listen to it again, definitely, and do the tasks with it.
I've listened to it twice. I've done my second one. Yeah.
It's really enlightening, isn't it? It's on another level. It's not what you normally think manifestation is. What about you, Dale?
I'm dipping into 3 books at the moment. I tend not to read one at a time. I tend to dip across.
I get that.
Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm big into biographies, love my biography books, always have done, even since I was a little kid. But I'm reading a book that's not a biography, which is a legendary book that we know because it's part of pop culture, but it's How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah,
I can honestly say it's one of the best books I've ever read in terms of every chapter is full of real life examples about how people think and how we work and how we operate. And even for me, I've tried to spend years studying like human behavior, how people work, what entertains people, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I've never read a book like it. It's just incredible little gems of information about how to just be a better person, which I think is a great thing. But the two biographies I'm also simultaneously reading is one's by Colin Hanton, who was one of the original Quarrymen. It's called Prefab. Great book. It tells about the story before the Beatles when they were Quarrymen. So I always try and read a Beatles book. I know. Before then, I read Brian Epstein's Cellar Full of Noise. I read that a few months back. Incredible book. Well, for me, it's about podcasts as well. I've had it for a little while, this book. And I mentioned him a moment ago. But my mate, Andy Grant, he was
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
I'm reading his book, which is You'll Never Walk, which, of course, is after his tattoo, after his leg got amputated. And,
phenomenal book.
Incredible book. I always tune into his podcast anyway, and many other podcasts. But yeah, I've been reading this book recently, and the lad for me is just a great lad, inspiration, and a mate of mine. So
yeah,
it's
brilliant. His book's phenomenal, and his story and his journey and how he's overcome everything that he's been through, and his mindset is on another level. He's unbelievable. He really is.
That's me next on my list then, because
I've got it. I'll give you it. I can share it with you. Yeah, it's amazing. It's fast. It's really, really good. So I want to say a massive, massive thank you because our time has disappeared. It's gone so quick. So Dale, I want to say a massive thank you to you for coming on, even though you're dead sick. Thanks to San. And Dale, what is your mantra closing quote that you're going to share with us?
It's one that my dad's always said since I was a young lad. My dad was a church youth worker. He's now a church pastor. And he always said, people don't care what you believe until they believe that you care. And I believe that is one of the most powerful things to live by. People don't care what you believe until they believe that you care, either about the subject you're talking about or about them as people.
I love that.
That's
one. Gets an extra shout out for that.
Yeah, that's what the teachers that. The kids buy into your subject when they think you buy into them massively.
Brilliant.
I love that. Thank you so much.
So massive thank you to Dale, massive thank you to Sandra, massive thank you to Mike from KCFM for sponsoring us this week. And we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.